Hello everyone, wishing you all good health and peace in life. Some moments in life feel heavier than words can carry. Moments when the future hangs on a single choice. After Uncle D's divorce hearing with his ex-wife, Huyen hugged little Maya tightly. Her only hope was that D would not abandon them. In her embrace was fear, but also a fragile prayer that love and family could still hold them together, even after the storms of the past. This is not just the end of a marriage, it is the beginning of a test of loyalty, trust, and the quiet strength of the heart. The courthouse was quiet that afternoon, yet inside the hearts of those present, storms were raging. The sound of the judge's gavel seemed to echo endlessly, sealing the end of a broken marriage. For D, it was the closing of one chapter. Yet for Huyen and little Maya watching from a distance, it was the beginning of fear. Huyen clutched Maya against her chest as though the world might take her child away. The little girl, too young to fully understand, could sense the trembling in her mother's arms. Her wide eyes searched the room, landing on D, who stood silently, his shoulders heavy with the weight of choices he never wished upon anyone. Huyen's heart whispered a single prayer: please don't abandon us. Please don't let this separation mean the end of us. She knew that life had been harsh, that D was not bound to her by marriage anymore. Yet what connected them went deeper than papers and signatures. It was the nights he stayed up fixing the roof, the mornings he carried heavy baskets to the market, and the quiet smiles Maya gave him when she called out uncle. D glanced at them, mother and child clinging to each other, fragile as leaves in the wind. In that moment, he understood. Divorce had freed him from a broken past, but it had not freed him from love, nor from responsibility. His bond with Huyen and Maya was not a chain, it was a promise. As they stepped out of the courthouse, the air smelled of dust and rain. Maya reached out her tiny hand toward D. Without hesitation, he took it, his rough palm closing around her small fingers. Huyen's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not only of sorrow. There was hope, delicate, uncertain, but alive. For even after the harshest endings, there are beginnings carved by love and silent sacrifice. And though the path ahead would not be easy, Huyen's fear began to soften. She realized that D's presence was more than a choice. It was his vow, spoken not in words, but in every act of protection. In every moment he stayed by their side. As they walked away from the courthouse, the late afternoon sun stretched across the street, painting long shadows on the ground. The world around them bustled with noise, motorbikes passing, vendors calling out, but for D, Huyen, and Maya, everything felt strangely quiet, as if they were wrapped in their own fragile cocoon of silence. D carried Maya on his arm. The little girl nestled her head against his shoulder, her small fingers clutching his shirt as if afraid he might disappear. Huyen walked beside them, her steps slow and uncertain, her mind still replaying the gavel's final strike. At the bus stop, Maya suddenly lifted her head. "Uncle," she said softly, her voice carrying both innocence and worry, "you will still come home with us, right?" D stopped in his tracks. He looked into Maya's round eyes, filled with a fear no child should carry. For a moment, his throat tightened. He crouched down, setting her gently on the ground, and placed his hands on her shoulders. "I will never leave you," he said quietly, yet firmly, his voice trembling with sincerity. "Even if life changes, my heart does not. You and your mother are my family." Huyen turned away, tears falling silently. She had tried so hard to be strong, to shield Maya from every storm, yet hearing those words broke something inside her, not from pain but from the fragile relief she had long denied herself. The bus arrived, creaking to a halt. Dee guided them aboard and found a seat by the window. The countryside slowly passed outside the fields, the rivers, the golden horizon. Maya eventually fell asleep, her head resting on his lap. Dee glanced at her peaceful face, then at Huyen, who sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap. Their eyes met for a brief moment. No words were spoken, but in that silence a promise was sealed. Whatever tomorrow held, they would face it together. That night, back in their small home, Huyen boiled water to wash Maya's feet. Dee fixed the bamboo mat near the window, his hands moving with quiet care. The house was simple, almost bare, yet in the soft glow of the oil lamp, it felt alive with warmth, with the fragile beginnings of a family built not on legal ties, but on love, sacrifice, and unspoken devotion. The next morning, the first light of dawn slipped through the cracks in the wooden shutters. Roosters crowed in the distance, and the faint sound of villagers starting their day floated in through the window. Dee woke early, as he always did. He lay still for a moment, watching Huyen and Maya sleeping peacefully. Huyen's arm was draped protectively around her daughter, and for the first time in a long while, their faces looked calm, free of fear, free of shadows. A soft smile touched his lips. He rose quietly, careful not to wake them, and stepped outside. The air was cool and damp with morning dew. Dee picked up an old hoe and walked toward the small patch of land behind the house. The soil was dry, scattered with weeds, but he knew with patience and care it could become a garden, a place to grow food for them, a place where Maya could run barefoot and laugh. As he struck the ground with the hoe, sweat began to gather on his forehead, but in his heart there was a strange lightness. Every strike was a step toward the future he longed to build. Inside, Huyen awoke to the sound of the hoe hitting the earth. She sat up, listening for a moment, and a quiet warmth spread through her chest. She had not asked him to do this, yet here he was, giving without words, caring without complaint. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stepped outside. "Dee," she called softly. He stopped and turned, his hands resting on the hoe. His shirt was damp with sweat, though the sun had barely risen. "You don't have to," Huyen began, her voice trailing off. "I want to," he interrupted gently. "If we plant today, by the next season Maya will have fresh vegetables to eat. She deserves that." Her eyes glistened. For so long, she had carried everything alone, not daring to rely on anyone. Now, seeing him there in the soft morning light, she felt something she thought she had lost forever: hope. Maya came running out, barefoot, her hair still messy from sleep. "Uncle," she shouted with excitement, "can I help?" Dee laughed and lifted her into his arms. "Of course," he said, "but you'll need a little hoe. Small like you." Maya giggled and clapped her hands. Huyen couldn't help but smile, her heart swelling at the sight. In that moment, their little house no longer felt empty. It felt alive with laughter, with dreams, with a quiet promise of tomorrow. Later that afternoon, the sun hung high, pouring golden light over the quiet village. Dee, Huyen, and Maya sat on a small mat outside their bamboo house, resting after a morning of work. A cool breeze rustled the trees, carrying the scent of guava and wildflowers. Maya was nibbling on a piece of sweet potato, her cheeks smudged with dirt from playing in the garden. She hummed a little tune, her voice pure and carefree. Dee watched her closely, a tenderness in his eyes that words could never capture. Huyen noticed. She lowered her gaze for a moment, afraid that her heart might betray her. For so long, she had built walls around herself to survive, walls of silence, of caution, of distance. Yet, little by little, this man was breaking through without even trying, not with promises or grand gestures, but with simple actions, mending the roof, digging the soil, protecting Maya as if she were his own. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps approached. It was Mrs. Lan, their neighbor, carrying a basket full of vegetables. "I thought you might need these," she said kindly, placing the basket down. "Pumpkins, beans, and some rice. The first days are always hard when starting fresh." Huyen quickly stood up, embarrassed. "Oh no, we can't." But Mrs. Lan shook her head firmly. "You can, and you will. This is how neighbors live, with open hands, not closed fists." She smiled warmly at Maya. "And besides, children grow stronger when they eat well. She deserves it." Maya beamed and bowed politely. "Thank you, Grandma Lan." Dee bowed his head in gratitude. "We'll never forget your kindness." Mrs. Lan gave them a knowing look, her eyes lingering on Dee and Huyen before she left. Huyen felt her cheeks warm. It was as if the old woman could see something even she herself hadn't dared to admit. As the sun dipped lower, the family sat together, sorting through the vegetables. Maya chattered happily, dreaming aloud of a garden filled with pumpkins and beans. Dee listened patiently, nodding, while Huyen watched them both, her heart pulled into directions. One part longed to trust again, to believe in love, in home, in family. The other part trembled, afraid that all of this could vanish in a single cruel moment, as it had before. But as the evening sky turned orange and purple, one quiet truth echoed within her. For the first time in years, she was not alone. Life lesson. In this story, we are reminded that true strength is not always found in grand actions, but in the quiet sacrifices and everyday kindness we give to one another. Dee shows that love is not just spoken, it is built slowly through care, patience, and protection. Huyen teaches us resilience, even after hardship and betrayal. The human heart can heal when it is nurtured with trust and compassion. Maya, with her innocence and joy, reminds us that children thrive not because of wealth, but because of love, stability, and the warmth of family. From the kindness of neighbors like Mrs. Lan, we learn that generosity is a bridge between strangers, turning an empty house into a home and giving courage to those who feel lost. The lesson is simple yet profound. When people stand together, sharing burdens and giving love, they can transform pain into hope, even in the most modest home, surrounded by kindness and unity. One can find the richest form of happiness